An aParent Patent by MewDeathCakes. When Peter woke up that morning, he knew it was going to be a bad day. Between the pounding of his head, of course he stayed up late last night working in the labs, and the fact he overslept, making him grumpy. He quickly aborted the idea of breakfast, thinking he could dip into his small stash of super-powered protein bars he kept in his locker and backpack. In his hurry to rush to the elevator, he noticed his shirt was on backwards, and by the time he reached the garage, he realised he didn't say goodbye to his parents. The teen had given a less than enthusiastic wave to his uncle as he climbed into the car.
"Whoa, kid, you good? Wake up on the wrong side of the web this morning?"
Happy said, mirth colouring his usually monotonous voice.
"Something like that," Peter replied lacklusterly.
Then he pulled his arms through his shirt sleeves to right his clothes. The drive to school, as always, was fairly short. The commute from the tower to Midtown was only 10 minutes, even in the morning rush hour. The driver turned to the teen, looking him over once again as he came to a stop in front of the building.
"You got everything, kiddo?"
"Yeah, Uncle Happy, thanks for the ride." The teen, while tired and grumpy, couldn't ignore his manners and still thanked his uncle accordingly.
"Don't forget that Rhodey's coming over tonight."
"Uncle Rhodey is coming tonight?" Peter exclaimed, excitement overtaking his bleariness and jolting him into a more wakeful mind.
"Yup, so he might pick you up after school instead of me, okay? But don't let him spoil your appetite or Pepper's going to be pissed. Also, don't tell her I said pissed in front of you."
"Uncle Happy, I go to high school. I've heard all the curse words by now. Plus, even if Uncle Rhodey feeds me, I promise I'll still be hungry.
Don't worry so much. You're too young to have a heart attack,"
Peter said as he climbed out of the car, turning back to look at Happy as he collected his school bag from the floorboard.
"And just how young is that, Peter?"
Happy asked, his even tone back with a small bite that Peter had learned didn't mean he was mad, but he was trying not to find the situation funny.
35?
The driver's mouth thinned in what Peter knew was a barely restrained smile.
Good answer, kid. Have a good day at school."
The teen smiled in reply and closed the door, turning to walk up the steps to Midtown. He was still tired through homeroom, as well as first period, and second, but when he was sitting down for lunch, he realised he forgot more than just eating breakfast this morning. He forgot his assignment for Ms. Warren's third period, his chemistry final report, worth 30% of his grade. Peter could feel himself beginning to panic as he gathered his lunch and sat at his usual table, waiting for Ned. He felt his phone buzz in his pocket and pulled it out, glancing at the screen. "Peter, I've noticed an elevation in your heart rate and breathing. Would you like me to notify Mr. Stark?" The text read, a message from Karen, who, due to her many protocols, was trying to protect Peter. He quickly typed back, "I'm okay, Karen, I just forgot my chem homework at home. Thank you, though." As quick as he was typing it out, Karen responded, "No problem, Peter. Would you like me to instruct you on some breathing exercises?" Peter looked over at Ned, who was making his way to their usual table, before looking down at his phone and typing out a quick reply. "Nah, Ned's here. I'll just text Dad and see if someone can swing it by here." Peter set his phone down on the table as his best friend moved to the chair beside him.
"Hey man, what's got you so worried?"
"I just realised I stayed up half the night in the lab finishing my chemistry final project, and then, well, I forgot it this morning because I was tired," Peter said. MJ laughed from her seat across from him. "Smooth move, Stark," she quipped, looking up briefly from her book to tease her friend.
"Oh man, is your dad going to drop it off for you?"
Ned asked, and Peter heard his phone buzz on the table. No one at Peter's school knew about his guardianship. Most just thought he still lived with his Aunt May in Queens, but Ned and MJ knew that, in reality, Peter and May had moved into the tower a year ago, when Happy proposed to her. It made more sense for them. Peter got to live with his mom and dad in the penthouse upstairs, while May and Happy got to do whatever newlyweds did downstairs on their private floor. Avengers Tower was closer to his school and May's work. Sure, it was weird living on the island instead of his home borough, but he was getting used to it, and he still went over the bridge every night that he patrolled, stopping by to see Mr. Delmar in his new shop. I'm gonna text him, but I don't know if he's in a meeting. I'll have to ask Friday. If anything, I could ask Mom to do it, or Uncle Happy if I beg enough. Or promise not to tell Mom that he said a curse in front of me this morning. The teen boys giggled at his uncle's expense as Peter picked up his phone. I asked around and someone is going to bring your project to school for you. Don't worry, they will be there in time for your third period presentation. Karen's text message left Peter stunned. The AI was getting smarter. She had never been this intuitive of his needs before. Oh, wow, okay, Peter muttered, turning the phone to Ned, who grinned wide. Your life, man. So cool. When lunch was finished and Peter was settling into his third period class, his nerves picked up again, and he looked over to his best friend, who had a trifold in front of him that was labelled, Exploring the Creation and Effects of Acid Rain. Peter remembered the hours Ned spent poring over researching the subject, sometimes over voice chat with Peter, who was also working on his own project. Anxiously, the teen grabbed his phone out of his pocket to message Karen as the tardy bell went off. Is Dad almost here with my presentation? I'm sorry, Peter. Mr. Stark was unable to leave his meetings to assist you, but an appropriate party is on their way with your project. They should be here in approximately 5 minutes. Peter's spider sense thrummed through his head lightly, just as he heard Flash hiss at him. Hey, Penis, did you forget about our big finale? Peter kept his eyes focused on the phone screen as his teacher took attendance. Peter, your breathing has picked up. Would you like me to begin your breathing exercises? Karen, stop with the breathing exercises. Mr. Parker, phones away please during class. Don't make me tell you again. Ms. Warren warned as she began the class, gesturing for the first student to begin their presentation. He heard Flash's muffled laughter in front of him. Peter tried his best not to roll his eyes as he put his phone back in his jacket pocket. Max was nearing the end of their presentation on periodic trends when there was a knock at the door. The deafening silence in the room made the click of Ms. Warren's sensible heels reverberate around the room, causing Peter to wince momentarily. He quickly pulled out his phone to check if Karen had sent him any updates. With the door cracked open, no one could see outside the classroom, but Peter's enhanced hearing picked up the quiet whir of his uncle's leg braces, a sound that was much too quiet for the human ear, and his eyes shot to the door where Miss Warren was standing ramrod straight. Can I help you? Miss Warren asked calmly, like she wasn't talking to War Machine. Yeah, my nephew left his project at home, and in the office they said I could just bring it here. Peter could hear that Rhodey was playing coy. The smug inflection in his voice gave him away. Your nephew? Ms. Warren asked dumbly, her brain seeming to process slower than her ears and mouth. Yeah, Rhodey said, pulling the door open the rest of the way in a very Tony-like manoeuvre, brushing past the teacher into the room. Every pair of eyes in the classroom was glued to the Avenger. Are we gonna die? Max muttered from the front of the room. Rhodey obviously heard them because he chuckled. Only then did Peter notice the box in his uncle's arms, and he jumped out of his seat excitedly. Oh my gosh, you came early. I thought you weren't flying in till later. And you brought my project. Thank you. You're the best. Ever. For real. The Iron Patriot rolled his eyes as he made his way to Peter in the third row of desks. What's this I hear from Karen, that you were up until 2 a.m. putting final touches on this hunk of scrap? Rhodey said, a smile pulling at his cheeks as he held out the box to his nephew. Hunk of... You know what, Uncle Rhodey, I rescind what I said a second ago. You're the worst. Ever. For real. Peter exclaimed, faux harshness like Tony's in his voice as he cradled the box to his chest. Oh, shucks, kid, and here I was going to get you ice cream after school before we head to dinner. Peter's brain stalled. Like Ben and Jerry's? Peter asked, setting the box with his project down on his desk. You mean like Ben and Jerry's? His uncle just smirked at him and crossed his arms.
I guess it's based on if we can get away with it, and on how good your project is, Junior.
Peter opened his mouth to once again argue before remembering where he was. He looked over at Ned, who was holding back a laugh, then chanced a glance at his classmates and fell back into his chair. Embarrassment lit up the teen's face. "Thank you for delivering my project. Goodbye," Peter said, voice stained as he put his head down on his desk, attempting to hide from the stares of his classmates and teachers. He could feel all the unasked questions from his peers hanging heavily in the air, and he debated grabbing his phone to do those breathing exercises Karen kept suggesting. Colonel Rhodes, sir?" Ms. Warren asked from the front of the room, her nervous tone tinged with what sounded like annoyance. "Can I help you with anything else?" Peter could almost hear the smile cracking across his uncle's face.
"Oh, actually, I was wondering if I could stay for Peter's presentation. I have been dying to know what his his project is about, especially since I went through all the trouble to deliver it here."
Peter looked up in time to see Rhodey doing air quotes around the word project.
"His dad wouldn't tell me what it was."
Peter heard a couple murmurs in the classroom, likely about the slip of Peter's dad. His status as an orphan was relatively common knowledge. "I'm begging you to leave. I love you, you know I do, but seriously leave," Peter begged quietly, sure that no one but Ned and Rhodey heard him.
"Ms. Warren, right? I can stay for one little presentation, right? That's fine?" he asked with all the calm and collectedness that comes from being an Air Force liaison.
"Oh, well, I guess, as long as you checked in with the office, it should be fine," Ms. Warren stuttered, nodding slowly, obviously flustered from the Avenger knowing her name. Peter's head once again made connection with the desk. Rhodey was acting just like Tony right now, and it was both endearing and immensely frustrating. Rhodey followed the teacher's direction and made his way to sit in the empty chair beside her desk. Usually that chair was reserved for Mr. Moritor when he came to observe the classrooms. Politely, Rhodey sat through the end of Max's periodic trends presentation. The other teen had stuttered through the rest of their presentation. Peter felt for them. If he still had hero worship left for Colonel James Rhodes, he'd probably feel much the same. Juxtaposition to Max, Peter tried not to groan in annoyance as the teacher called him to present next. "Hello, my name's Peter Parker, and—" Peter was cut off by his uncle's muffled laughter, and the teen shot him a death glare. "Today I'm going to be presenting my project about nanomaterials and composites for energy conversion and storage." The teen looked at the classroom and all the blank stares, glancing over to his teacher, who looked impressed, and Rhodey, who looked proud. Peter dove into his spiel about the storage of information in the cells of plants, and storage of new generation solar cells, high specific surface area electrodes for efficient energy storage systems, including batteries and supercapacitors, and nanocatalysts for increased triple phase boundary in fuel cells. He explained as clearly as he could, and then he calmly turned to his box and pulled out the flat tablet-sized piece of glass and muttered something quietly, projecting it onto the ceiling. Miss Warren, if you could turn off the light for a minute," Peter asked, swiping at the tablet to move the projection around the room. Enraptured, Rhodey suddenly wished he had been recording as Peter rambled, looking exactly like Tony. Sometimes Rhodey was shocked when he remembered the two weren't related by blood. His eyes focused on the projections over the students' heads onto the ceiling, listening as Peter explained things, blowing them up in size and opening them so students could see the components inside. The teen so easily related plants to technology and wrapped the topic up nicely by producing a little potted plant out from his box. "I made this as well. I tried to make a plant using all of my understanding of both chemistry and engineering. It has solar panels on the leaves that power it, and it turns CO2 into O2. It also removes pollutants just like a real plant would, although it does it much more efficiently." The way Peter said it, Rhodey didn't think he was bragging. He was just explaining his choices for the project. But the man couldn't help but stare at his nephew. Knowing the kid was smart, he had worked with him in the lab once or twice, but to see this university-level work from a junior in high school, he was taken aback. He was amazed. Ms. Warren turned back on the lights and stared at Peter. Ned began clapping from his shared bench with Peter, and the other students followed along. The kid wasn't the best public speaker, but damn, he was impressed. Holy guacamole, Junior. I should have recorded that. I'd love to watch your parents cry. Every head in the room turned to look at the Iron Patriot, having forgotten he was there with the novelty of the projections flying around the room. Peter, on the other hand, had to force himself to relax, lest his supercharged grip break the plant he brought for his teacher. Here you go, Miss Warren. If you look on the side here, it also tests the CO2 in the air, so you don't need to use a carbon monoxide detector. But instead of beeping really loudly, it'll call you, or text you. You gotta input your phone number and set your preference. Peter? The teacher stopped him. Yes? You can't turn this in. You need to, I don't know, patent this? Oh, it's pending still, but yeah, house rules. I'm not allowed to complete a project without patenting, Peter replied, calming considerably when he realised his teacher's complaints weren't about his assignment's quality. Right, Ms. Warren replies evenly, like that's a normal house rule for a teenager. All right, Junior, grab your stuff. We're getting ice cream early. But Mom said... Are you serious right now? Get your stuff. I'm calling Pepper right now and telling her I took you out early. I don't care. She's gonna be mad, Peter said warningly as he reached his seat and grabbed his backpack. She already told Happy to tell me not to let you buy me after-school snacks. Ned looked at Peter in shock, who just shrugged in response. Rhodey let out a faux put-upon sigh and made his way over to the two teens. Ice cream isn't a snack, Peter. Plus, if we get her a pint of the Cherry Garcia... The Avenger cut himself off upon seeing Ned. Hi, Ned. How's your nonna? Oh, she's good, Mr. Rhodes, Ned squeaked, making terrified eye contact with Peter. Good. Tell her I said hi, Rhodey said, grabbing Peter by the shoulder and leading him towards the classroom door. I'm really so sorry about him, Ms. Warren. I'll totally make it up to you, Peter promised, wiggling out of his uncle's grip to walk over to the teacher. It's fine, Peter, but please make sure your, uncle signs you out properly. You don't need any more unexcused absences on your record, Monica said, flickering her eyes over to the Avenger, giving him a once-over. Peter Benjamin Stark, enough with the chatting, more with the moving, Brody called, opening the classroom door and motioning towards it. Peter turned bright red and practically ran from the room, the older man laughing in reply. Monica watched them leave in shock, unable to process what just happened. She looked over to Ned Leeds, who was trying not to laugh, then to Eugene Thompson, who looked like he swallowed a lemon, but also found out his parents were getting divorced. She looked down at her desk, where there was an empty cardboard box and a little metal potted plant. She sighed heavily, knowing that presentations would only be downhill from there. Stark! Flash yelled as the door swung closed. Thanks for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this, and thank you again to MewDeathCakes for allowing me to record this. Have a lovely rest of your day.